Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to focus over here on the router on a stick. And just like last time, I gave these all /24s just to make things easy. 0, 1, 2, 3. The same VLANs 10, 20, 30, 40. The big difference of what we're going to do this time is we got to configure the VLANs on the switch, and then we have to configure the stuff on the router. So let's start first off with the switch, just to make things easy. What we're going to do is we're going to come in here, slide this over here so we can still see everything. We're going to enable this, config T. We're going to go into, let's set up our host name, of course, switch 2. We're going to look at all these ports and we're going to see where we configured stuff. So if we take a look here, we can see we start off on Fast Ethernet 4, and then we got 5, 6, and 7. So let's go back into our switch here and go interface FA0/4. And then just like we did in the previous one, we're going to set up our switch ports, mode access. We're going to do switch port access VLAN, and this one's going to be 10. We're going to do the same thing again on 5. We're going to set up VLAN 20, switch port mode access. You don't technically need switch port mode access because these things will auto detect, but it's a habit you should get into because what that does is it limits it to only one device being able to connect to there at a time. And then it's only allowing also one VLAN. If you set it up for a trunk mode, then it's going to give it access to anything that's on the switch by default, and you don't want that because that's going to be a security issue. So let's go back in here. We're going to go 6. So 6 was VLAN switch port mode access, and then VLAN 30. And then we're going to go 7. We're going to do VLAN 40 and switch port mode access. There. And so once that's done, you can actually check all this information by doing show VLAN. When you do show VLAN, you can see here, it's created these VLANs for us, 10, 20, 30, and 40, and we've given them IP, or not IP, we've assigned them to these interfaces. By default, everything is assigned to VLAN 1. And so, but it's what's also called a dummy switch or a dumb switch, and where everything's just on the same VLAN, so there's no actual smart management. So what we're doing here is we're able to break apart everything. The other thing that we have to configure here is we have to configure this port back to the router. And remember what I was talking about before, you can see this is going to gig 1, and then the other end of the switch, for some reason, it's not showing up, but this should be also gig 1 on this one, which you can actually see down there. It's actually gig 1 also. We're going to set this up as a trunk. So we're going to go in here, go back into our config, interface G01, because that's the trunk that we're working on. So first thing we want to do, switch port, and instead of turning it into a trunk right off, what we're going to do is we're going to limit it. So we're going to say switch port trunk, and then what we need to do is we need to say allowed, and we need to say what VLANs are allowed. So we say VLAN 10, 20, 30, 40. And now we can do switch port mode trunk. So you see it took it out of its auto detect and brought it back up as a trunk mode. So now if we do a show VLAN, you'll notice we don't have a gig 01 anymore because it's no longer an actual VLAN port and because it's a trunk. So we have to do a show interface trunk to see it. And then when you do that, you can see we have gig 01, and these are the VLANs that we're allowed to pass on it. So what's going to happen is any VLAN 1 traffic that's on this switch won't ever leave the switch. We're not passing VLAN 1 over here to router 2. We're only going to keep VLAN 1 on this switch. Whereas VLAN 10, 20, 30, and 40, we're going to pass over to the router. So we've got the switch configured. So now let's get over to the router. So in the router, make this a little bit bigger so we can see. What we're going to do is something a little bit different. We are going to, oops, give me one moment. I did not clear startup. Erase startup hash config. Confirm. Reload. Okay, let me fast forward so it gets through this real fast. Okay. There we go. So here we go, blank router, just to make sure that everything's here. So enable config T. We're going to set our host name to router 2, because this is our second location. And then we're going to go into interface G01, and we're going to do a no shut on this, because that's going to bring it up, and then this will go green. But the big difference of what we're actually doing now is we're going to create sub-interfaces. They're basically virtual interfaces, but they're going to be for these. So we're going to do interface G01 dot, and in this case, because we're working for VLAN 10, we're going to do dot 10. And then when we're in here, we have to do an encapsulation, and you can see there's only one option, .1q, and then you have to give it the VLAN ID, 10. So now, what we can do, now that we've done that, we can give it an IP address. So we can give it 172.16.0.1 subnet mask .0. And then we're going to go into .20. And I just want to show you what happens here. So now we're working with this .20. So what happens if we do IP address 172.16.1.1 255.255.255.0. It's going to tell you you can't do that in the sub interface. You have to define either as an IEEE 802.10 or an IEEE 802.1q. So basically, because this is encapsulation, it's .1q, and then we give it the VLAN ID, which in this case is 20. Now, if we run our IP command again, it's all good. These ones by default, which I didn't need to run the no shut, because you can see here when we created it, it brought it up. So let's see here. The other thing we need to do, G01, we need to do a no shut on that. Okay. Oh, I already did that at the beginning, didn't I? Yes, I did. Okay. So let's go here. We're going to go to interface .30. The other thing that we can do with .30 is we can run this encapsulation, and we can make it 40. So subinterface 30 is running on VLAN 40. That is not good practice, because that gets really confusing. So what you want to do is you want to make them match. So whatever your subinterface is what VLAN you want it to be on. So in that case, we'll do that. IP address 172.16.2.1 255.255.255.0. Boom. And then we want to go into .40. So we create it, brought it up, and then we're going to give it VLAN 40. And then what happens if you try to give it like this IP address that's already assigned, you're going to see it overlaps with this subinterface already. So we need to make sure that we update the IP address. And done. And we do a show IP int brief. And you can see here we have got all of these turned up, but the protocol is turned down because I believe there's one other command I need to do. So bear with me one moment. Interface G01. There is one other command in here that we have to do, and it is no, we already did the encapsulation, so that should be all set. So why is this not working? Let's just do this. We'll end this. Show IP int. Make sure we program the right interface here. We program G01. Just make sure that this is indeed connected to G01. Oops. It is showing G01, but this side, let's remove this link, and let's re-add our link just to make sure. So from here, oh, we did it on the wrong interface. We wanted to go from G00. So this link I have up here is wrong. So let's just remove that link. We'll re-add that one later. And let's re-add this one. And this is, troubleshooting, which we will definitely focus on later in the semester. So G01, there we go. And now you can see the stuff comes up. So now let me re-add in this one, G00 to 00. There we go. I had those ports swapped, which does happen from time to time. But now if we run this again, you can see everything's up. So if we go over here to PC7 and we go to our command prompt, we say ping 172.16.0.2. Our first one's probably going to fail, and then after that we should have success. Yep, and there we go. And now if we run that again, all 4 of them will be successful. So, okay. So what we have is we've got routed VLANs done. We've got, this is called router on a stick because it uses the one interface, but we're splitting it through multiple VLANs. And then next we'll cover over the correct routing within this site. And then we're going to connect in these individual sites.